What I love about art therapy is that it actually breaks down any verbal barriers and it becomes its own form of language. So we use lines, shapes, and colors to really describe how we're feeling. And I find it to be one of the most effective ways to help kids express their emotions because we are breaking down that language barrier. And so art therapy is actually an integrative mental health profession. It combines the knowledge and understanding of human development, psychological theories, and techniques. And we combine that all in with metaphors and the creative process. So we utilize different kinds of art materials from drawing and painting, clay, photography, sculpture, collage. And we really use it to help build those vital social skills, help to express your emotions, build your confidence, behavioral skills, all of those kinds of things, all while reducing stress and anxiety.
Welcome to the Soaring Child Podcast, where parents of children with ADHD learn tips and tricks to help their child soar at home, at school, and in life. We feature interviews with experts, medical professionals, and parents just like you who are learning how to reduce ADHD symptoms using food and other natural strategies. Because children with ADHD deserve to soar just like every other child. I'm your host, Dana Kay. Hello, parents. This is Dana Kay here with another edition of the Soaring Child Podcast. Art therapy for children with ADHD. Now, when I first heard about it, I was intrigued for sure. How does it work? What does it actually look like in practice? Where can parents find an art therapist to work with their child? If you have these same questions, then you don't want to miss today's episode. My guest is a registered art therapist and licensed mental health counselor. As a mother of three, she knows how important it is for our children to feel happy, healthy, confident, and connected to themselves and the world around them. She helps parents with children with ADHD and anxiety who feel concerned, frustrated, and overwhelmed to support their kids to regulate emotions, express feelings in a healthy way, and build their confidence so they can bring connection, laughter, and joy into their homes. She believes that when we empower our children to confidently navigate their emotions, support their mental health, and find their inner voice, we provide them with a strong foundation required to thrive throughout life. Now it's time to welcome Kayla Helenske to the Soaring Child. Hi, Kayla. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Fantastic having you. And now both Kayla and I actually met online as we both had the same business mentor and both ended up living in the same state. So not too far away from each other. It is such a small world, and just how you can connect with people that you would have never crossed paths with before.
Right. Yeah, it's really exciting when you are like, oh, hey, you just live across the bridge from me.
Yeah, not too far at all.
Right.
So I'm really, really excited to dive in. I know that this is, you've been in my free Facebook group before, and you've presented to my following and everything, and everyone just loved when you spoke. Honestly, we got so much feedback, and I couldn't wait to have you on the podcast. And we're going to really dive in, and hopefully we can dive even a bit more deeper than we did when you were in my Facebook group. So let's start at the beginning. Why don't you just tell us what is art therapy and what makes it sort of more beneficial than traditional talk therapy?
Yeah, great. So what I love about art therapy is that it actually breaks down any verbal barriers and it becomes its own form of language. So we use lines, shapes, and colors to really describe how we're feeling. And I find it to be one of the most effective ways to help kids express their emotions because we are breaking down that language barrier. And so art therapy is actually an integrative mental health profession. It combines the knowledge and understanding of human development, psychological theories, and techniques. And we combine that all in with metaphors and the creative process. So we utilize different kinds of art materials from drawing and painting, clay, photography, sculpture, collage. And we really use it to help build those vital social skills, help to express your emotions, build your confidence, behavioral skills, all of those kinds of things, all while reducing stress and anxiety.
Oh, I love it. And what makes it more sort of beneficial than that talk therapy, the traditional one?
Right. And I find that it is more beneficial because it breaks down that language barrier that I was talking about. So often it feels like you're pulling teeth to get your kids to say anything.
Yes.
And I can feel like that as a therapist too. Like, okay, I can ask the same questions parents ask, but when we dive deeper and we use the art process, it really breaks down that feeling and that need to have to talk about something versus helping to explore and kind of get to the root of what is going on.
That's really interesting. And it sounds similar, and you're the one that can correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds sort of similar to play therapy. Would you put it sort of in the same category, or how are they the same, or how are they different?
Yeah, absolutely. Play and art therapy have a lot of kind of intertwining components. The art therapy just truly focuses on the art process. We also do incorporate, some play. So the other day with a client, we were working on, all my stuff is online. And so we were working on a way to like communicate and how different ways that we communicate show up in different ways for different people. And so we would be like, hey, draw a square. And each of us would draw a square. And then the next person would give an assignment of draw 3 lines on your paper. And then we would keep going back and forth, ping ponging and giving each other these kind of assignments.
Yes.
And then at the end, we took a look at our pictures and realized how different they were. And so it's just this beautiful metaphor of like, yes, we can play, we can have this interaction, this communication that's happening. And also we can then use that to be like, wow, we got the same instructions. Like, how did it end up differently? So when I think about kids that, are struggling with ADHD or anxiety, we can look at that. We can look at, well, you were sitting in the same classroom as everyone else, but things were, computing differently for you, or you felt more anxious than the kids around you. And so you have that ability to say, look, we are similar, and yet we do things differently. So I just really like how it brings up more of that deep conversation versus just the surface level conversation.
Yeah. And so talk me through that. When you were having this conversation, and I know you can't use any names or anything like that, but what does that look like? So you've drawn this picture, you started with the square and then the 3 lines, and then you were talking about how that picture, you're given the same instructions, but it looked differently. So where did that conversation lead? How did that get open up, and where did it go from there?
Yeah, so I do this with a lot of clients, and so it definitely is blanket statements because I want to protect all of their confidentiality. Yes. But as we're speaking, like it opens up different doors for exactly what we're working on. And so if it was that we're working on identity, or we're working on, how we process things, or how we, dress differently than friends, or, all these different components of kids and who they are and people in general, it allows us to really kind of break down and be like, we can have the same lines of communication. We can have the same kind of tasks we have to get done every day, but we can have a different response to that and a different way that we show up. And so for sometimes it might be a child struggling with math. Like the frustration of math comes up all the time in my practice.
Interesting.
And pushing through when something feels boring or something you just don't want to do. And so we're able to be like, why does it feel so much easier for somebody else than it does for you? And then we can kind of dive into that more about what's coming up for them. Is it that they're afraid they're going to get wrong, or they just don't want to hear the same thing over and over again because they feel like they got it and they want to move on. And so we dive deeper.
Okay. And so, just say you come up with, or they come up with to say that, they don't want to get it wrong. How do you then, with art therapy, build in the strategies for that child when those feelings come up? So, we know traditional talk therapy, you say, well, you could do it this way. Or do you build in strategies in terms of the art side or more of the talk side once that's opened up?
Both. We definitely intertwine both into it.
Yes.
And so it might be, well, how do you picture yourself? what kind of fears do you have? And we can draw an image of that. What does it look like? Where is your safe spot? I know I'm kind of jumping around a bit, but there's just so many areas that we can take it. And so if for one kid is like, well, I have trouble going to sleep at night, or I have trouble sitting next to kids in class because I feel overwhelmed by all the stimulation. And so we can sit and start to create the next step for them. And we create it visually with the art, but we also have intertwining the talk with it.
Fantastic. And so do you find there's a perfect age for art therapy, or is it sort of more from young to old? What's that sort of perfect balance?
Yeah, it's beneficial for all ages. And it just because it does break that language barrier, it can go really young. As far as for who I work with in my practice and what I see working is really that 6 to 13 is what that's what I work with.
Yes.
And so, and I also am all virtually, I'm all online. And so I find that age range works really well
online and
for that.
For sure.
Because there are those other components that come in with having to be able to do it by themselves.
Okay. And so you work directly one-to-one over Zoom with someone? Is that how it works? Or
yeah, that's how I do it in my art therapy practice.
Okay, fantastic. So why is art therapy, really beneficial for kids with ADHD and anxiety?
Yeah, so when we look at kids who are struggling with ADHD and anxiety, there's those intense emotions and the difficulty expressing those emotions in kind of socially acceptable ways. It comes out more like an outburst, or, it's just kind of like all balled up. And then all of a sudden, this is how I feel. And so we really look at those behaviors that they're struggling with, the social skills, and being able to learn how, we can connect those pieces together, how we can work on impulse control and help to build that low self-esteem that sometimes will come with those having to be redirected all the time and kind of like, why am I always getting in trouble for this? And so we help to build all of that. And oftentimes, like we say that, ADHD comes with coexisting diagnosis. And so the depression or anxiety and a lot of that redirection we're talking about, the OCD, the sensory processing disorders, ODD or oppositional defiant disorders, learning disabilities. And so the art really allows us to kind of go deeper into helping support all of those struggles and allowing them to really express what's going on for them and really work on kind of taking it out from, like, if we think about art, you can actually move it out of you and visually look at it.
Yes.
Right. So if I draw or paint a picture of all the things I'm holding inside, like I can visually look at that, which feels so much more powerful to look at it on a piece of paper versus just like thinking about all of the things
and trying to deal with it internally,
right.
that tug of war. Definitely. I'm really interested. And the only reason that I'm interested in diving a little bit deeper on this is when, my son was really struggling with his symptoms. Impulsivity was one of the biggest things for him. And so I'm interested to know, how would you mentioned impulsivity. What would be an art therapy that you would do for a kid that was really impulsive?
You mean like while we're in session, or to be working on?
Well, in session in terms of an art project, how would you sort of open up that conversation?
Yeah. So we can talk about, often they'll be like, I had this happen today at school and this is what, how I responded, and it didn't go so well. And so we can really draw, like, make a comic book. Like, let's make a comic strip of what happened. And then we can start to look at, well, when did things go a little tricky? Like, when did you start to struggle? Because it all happens so quick, right?
Yes.
Like from going from things are okay to, oh my goodness, how did that happen? At the end, it can be so quick. So if we can kind of expand that for a moment and look at it like a comic strip, like step-by-step moments, we can start to see, like, and maybe this happens weekly. Maybe there's something that happens over and over. And so we can start to look more into that of, okay, what seems to keep being the trigger? When are you starting to feel frustrated? Or when are you just like, I can't do it anymore, or become impulsive? When do we notice that? And what happens before that? And so it allows us to, like, instead of just talking about it, asking a kid, why did you do that? We have the ability to like break it down into pieces visually and actually start to see patterns that are coming up for them.
I love that. And I'm just going to put my non-therapist hat on here, because I'm not a therapist, but would you then look at different scenarios and draw a comic that would go, well, if we did this, what would the comic look like? Or if we did this, so giving them sort of different strategies that they could have done in that scenario. Is that how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. We can then move it to the next part. Okay, so what could we have done better? What did we wish we had in that moment that we didn't have?
Yes.
And that might be support. And we can look at I statements of like, I felt frustrated because I felt like no one was noticing me and I wanted or I needed. And so we can kind of really work through those steps of I want, or I was, so I was frustrated, the feeling, the why were you frustrated, and start to understand, what do I need and what would have been helpful? And so we can start to piece that together so that they feel like they have the actual tools to help them.
That's amazing. And I know that my son would have totally benefited from doing a comic strip. He would have loved that back in the day. So in what ways can art therapy really calm the nervous system and increase focus?
Yeah, so when we look at art therapy, we actually have scientific studies that say that within 45 minutes of the art making process, that your body starts to release serotonin, which is that feel good, happy hormone, helps to just kind of reduce the stress, calm the nervous system. And so we bring that all together with, maybe it's a mandala, creating something in a center. If we're feeling all overwhelmed and we're all over the place with our thoughts, bringing it into a center. Where is this piece we need to focus on right now? And just kind of bringing it in together in that smaller space.
I do love that. I know, the kids that we work with, probably the same, you and me, they're in that heightened state of arousal, and we need to reduce that stress. And the stress can come from internal factors, it can come from external factors, but I do love that, bringing that focus into that one piece. And it's kind of like meditation, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And we do, in the way that I work, I do intertwine meditation and mindfulness, breathing techniques, all of those calming skills that intertwine so beautifully together to give it a whole holistic approach. The other way is, if we look at kids, they can use the clay to reduce stress. They can pound it. They can be angry at it. They can, tear it apart, squeeze it, do whatever they want with that. And then we can use that piece and also rebuild it. We can rebuild into what we want to feel and how we want things to look for ourselves. This can be another way that to like dissipate any of that energy that sometimes becomes like squeezing peers too tight, or family members too tight, or jumping off the couch. We can redirect that into letting the energy out through the clay and pushing it and pounding on it and breaking it apart.
Yeah, I do love the use of clay, definitely for getting out those strong emotions in a healthier way than sometimes they do come out. So you've mentioned drawing, you've mentioned clay. What are some of the other strategies or modalities that you use in art therapy?
So we do a lot of painting, clay, drawing, like we said, and collage is really powerful. Great ways to kind of bring pieces together, different thoughts that you're having. You can, photography is great to kind of take imagery of what you're experiencing. It kind of depends where the client is and the therapist and what they want to dive into. But absolutely, there's no limit on what materials you can use.
No, that's fantastic. And so how can parents really support their child with art therapy in the home? Because I know that there'll be a lot of listeners out there thinking, well, this sounds fantastic, but, how can I do it at home?
Right. So you can absolutely support the creative art process at home. Again, it's going to be different than art therapy, but you can set up that process. I think a lot of parents are like, well, what would be the difference? And you think about like, well, you can have someone give you a massage at home. That feels good. It's relaxing. It calms you. And yet it's not the same as going to a massage therapist.
Definitely.
So, way, because more people know about massage therapists and than the art therapy. So I like to break it down a little bit like that. Like, absolutely, you can support the art at home. You can create a space that's inviting, that's not overwhelming, just a desk or even a table in your kitchen that's cleaned off, sketch pads, watercolors, oil pastels, things that can be easy to clean up. So if you're a parent that's like, oh, I don't know, I don't want art supplies everywhere in my house, you can make it in a way that's like held in a little tote that they can have. We really want to focus on the process of creating rather than the product. So this might be allowing them to get messy if they choose. They might want to be destructive with the art materials because all day long they're holding it together. They're trying to get through their day, making sure they're making the steps and making, their day go the best they can, that sometimes they just need to unravel. And so allowing that safe spot for that to happen is super powerful for them.
Definitely.
Yeah. And then absolutely be curious. Be curious without any judgment. So avoiding the judgment words of, we all do it. Wow, that's beautiful. Or I'm so proud of you. And instead asking questions like, imagine if it had a name, what would it be? Or tell me more about this animal. I'm really excited to hear about this. And really opening it with open-ended questions versus this is great, or this is good, or this is beautiful. And so allowing them to have those emotions and allow them to talk about any of the feelings that come up, and make sure you listen and you validate and you don't dismiss what's happening. So it's really important to practice this together when we're not in the heat of the moment, right? Like practicing your skills, just like a math test. You're not going to all of a sudden during the middle of the test have all the answers if you didn't practice it. So just with our mental health and with our emotions, we're not going to have all of the skills if we don't practice it and don't work on learning what to do. And so the way that we work is to be able to kind of build that up. And so if we think about our kid and they're like, I don't like it. And you don't want to just, as a parent, we want to be like, oh, it's okay. You did great. Right? You want to fix that feeling for them, but it's okay. We want to open that connection instead. And instead be like, if they don't like it or they're frustrated, opening the questions of, well, what don't you like about it? What would you want to be different? What's making you feel so frustrated about what you created? And so you can really open that question instead of shutting down their feelings. That really opens up the dialogue instead.
Yeah, look, open-ended questions are amazing we use them a lot in when we're coaching our clients. But it definitely does take practice because we're not taught to talk that way. We are taught to, help our child or make them not feel those feelings. And so how would a parent go about bringing some of those open-ended questions into their vocabulary? Is there any resources they can turn to go and find some of those so they can really start practicing themselves? It's not just about the child practicing the art. It's also about the parent practicing this way of talking.
Right. Yeah. I've created different guides for families that they can access. And so this is, telling you how different art materials can help to support the emotional expression and all these different ways that you can have those open-end communication with them as well. And so I've created different guides like that, which can be really helpful for you to kind of set yourself up for success in having those communication pieces.
And so if a family doesn't work with you, where would they go off to, Google? Like what would they put in Google search?
Oh man. That's a tricky one. I'm trying to think of that because I guess I haven't Googled it.
No, I know. It's just, yeah, I'm just sort of thinking, could they Google open-ended questions for children? Because I know that it definitely does take a lot of practice, and it took a lot of practice for me as well, when I was first starting to work with other families. So yeah, maybe Googling open-ended questions for children to support their emotions. Yes. Because I do want to give the listeners, that take home, information that they can do, and they can then apply it in their house as well. Now, how would a family find an art therapist? Would it be the same as going to sort of any therapist who says they use art and play for their work?
No, so an art therapist is not the same. We actually have our own registration and board. And so an art therapist is specifically trained to use the art materials as part of the therapeutic process. And so they know the risks and the benefits of using each material and have spent thousands of hours working under supervision to kind of learn this process and to become an expert in using art in the healing process. So to find, and you will find talk therapists who will use art materials and such as markers, or have kids draw, and they just kind of work together in that way. But there is a difference between the skills required to become an art therapist. So you can go to the American Art Therapy Association. It's a website, and you can look up different registered art therapists near you.
Okay, fantastic. And so typically with an art therapist, I know you say that you work online. And so do you work with families all across the USA, or is it very state specific, or how does that work?
For me personally, I have my online art therapy, and since I have a dual degree, I'm a licensed mental health counselor and a registered art therapist. Right now, with my one-on-one clients, I just work with clients in Washington State.
Okay.
But I am expanding that into my membership.
Yes.
Where I'm helping to teach parents how to use these tools and to support their family's mental health. And so I do that in a monthly membership, and that is available to anyone in the world, wherever you are.
That's awesome. And what does that look like? What do families get from that?
Yeah, they get each month they get a new kind of content bundle, and that's going to give them 2 to 3 different art directives so that they learn how to use the process as a family. It builds that confidence, that connection, those skills that we've been talking about. We dive deeper into supporting mental health with nutrition and how we can support like our better sleep. And so you get guides each month, one guide that'll help kind of dive deeper into all of that, as well as Q&As with asking me any kind of questions so that I can support your individual support along the way. Because as we know, we're all different and our kids' struggles are different. And so really giving that touch point to ask questions of me, as well as a community of other like-minded parents and families with those exclusive discussions happening of how they're supporting their family and what's working for them and what's not.
Oh, fantastic. I'm interested to know, how did you get into art therapy? Was there something that, motivated you to go get that extra accreditation to become a specific art therapist?
Yeah, so art has always been important to me. When I was a kid, I struggled with anxiety and panic attacks. And so I always turned to art as my way of coping and calming myself. And so when I went to school to get my degree, I started as an art teacher. So I got my degree in elementary, or I guess it was K through 12 education.
Yes.
And so I was an art teacher, and my first job was an elementary art teacher. And I saw how powerful the connections were being made in my class and the things that were coming out for my students. And so often I had to refer them to the counselor because I didn't know, I wasn't equipped to know. I just knew something was coming up and something needed to be addressed. And so there was that disconnect when I would send them because they didn't have that same connection as they did with me. And so I would send them to the counselor, and I was like, I knew kind of in the back of my mind about art therapy and that I kind of had this vision and this goal to go towards it. And that really sealed it for me. And so I immediately applied for to get my master's degree in art therapy and mental health counseling. I wanted the dual degree with both of them. And so that's what I did. And that's the route I took. And I really find it to be powerful. And immediately after graduation, I opened an art wellness studio in Seattle, where I taught the art classes for kids, and I also had my art therapy practice. So I could still meet families on both ends. I could give that creative expression through the art making, and I could also go deeper with the art therapy.
Oh, that's amazing. And I think that, hearing that personal story in how that you were dealing with the anxiety and how that helped you is really wonderful for all those parents listening, because they can then sort of tie that with their own families to go, okay, well, we can see that this works for mental health, and with kids with anxiety, kids with ADHD, and giving them that outlet to get those emotions out in a better way than being just, destructive. Thank you so much, Kayla, for joining me today and really sharing your knowledge and experience with our listeners. Can you just tell our listeners where they can find and follow you online?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on Instagram and Facebook. Both are Kayla Helenske. That's KaylaHelenske for both Instagram and Facebook. And then I also have a free training for families to learn the vital skills to support your family's mental health and help your child to regulate emotions and build their confidence. And that is located at Wait, I'm messing that up.
We can drop the link in the show notes.
Yes, so please do that. It's going to be a long one.
No, that is totally. Yeah, we will definitely drop that link in the show notes. So thank you so much for today. Listeners, thank you for tuning into this week's episode of The Soaring Child. I'm Dana Kay, your ADHD health practitioner. Keep on thriving. Thank you for listening to the Soaring Child podcast today. To learn more about how to help your child with ADHD soar using natural strategies, visit our website at ADHDthriveinstitute.com and follow us on social media at ADHD Thrive Institute.